Coming up next, I'm going to give you advice no matter where you are in life, but certainly if you're stuck, you need to hear this. And then we're going to look at a new study about unethical behavior in the workforce, and we have a special guest to talk about you next. Helping you win at work. This is the Ken Coleman Show. I'm Ken. I want you to get better so that you can have the best opportunity to make that paycheck a little bit bigger. And let's talk about that paycheck. Let's talk about where you are in life. Let's talk about the American dream in the context of, I think the American dream is just simply, I want to live the life that I desire. I want to be able to have some margin financially, emotionally, professionally, so that I can call my own shots. That'd be my rough draft of what I believe is the American dream, which, by the way, is not just the American dream, it's the human dream. It's what the human spirit longs for. So if you're a little bit behind financially today, I want to come at this maybe in a different way than you've ever thought about your financial future. So a couple questions. Are you chasing a bigger paycheck? Or are you chasing meaning and freedom? Do you know what meaningful work actually would look like for you? Do you know the dollar amount? Got a number in your mind that says, all right, at this point, I got enough being I've got some margin. I can breathe easily. And more importantly, I can live life the way I want to live it. So what steps do you need to take? If the answer to those questions isn't what you would like it to be. All right, that's the framework. I asked you those questions, and for those of you watching and listening, if you need to, take just a moment to rewind. And I would really love for you to pause or certainly revisit later those questions in light of what I'm about to share. Because I think it's really, really important to get those answers out of your head and heart and on paper and look at them. And there's science behind this idea of let me identify those answers so that I can see where I am, and then it allows me to see what the gap is between where I am and where I want to be. Now, let me give you a little bit more data for some context on what I'm going to share with you today. Ramsey Solutions did the largest study of net worth millionaires a few years ago. And interestingly enough, and to be completely honest with you, when I first heard these results, I was a bit shocked by this. And then when I thought about the way Ramsey Solutions has taught the financial baby steps, which I'm going to review for you today. If you've never heard them before, I'm going to do a quick review of those, or a reveal rather, to those of you who haven't heard them. Dave Ramsey being our founder and coming up with the baby steps after years of counseling people about their money on the air. When I heard what I'm about to tell you and I put it in context of what we have taught for decades, and as a result seen millions upon millions of people change their financial lives, then it made sense to me. But here was the surprise data for me. I was not surprised to see engineers and accountants in the top 5 of net worth millionaires. I was surprised to see teachers there because A, they don't make a bunch of money, and B, they're capped on their financial growth. So my instincts when I first saw that, I was like, wow, I'm a little surprised to see that for those two reasons. They don't make a lot of money, and not only they make a lot of money, which, by the way, the latest data I've seen, somewhere in the mid-60s of what the median is. So if we look at every state in the country and we look at top all the way down the bottom, the middle, not average, the median is somewhere in mid-60,000. So it's not a huge amount of money, okay? And certainly in today's world where things are so very expensive. So they're also capped. They're not going to year over year jump 10, 12%. It's just not going to happen. So I was initially surprised. But here's what we learned. two really distinct ingredients, if you will, that I want us to lock in on today. Ingredient number one, they were disciplined. They lived on less than they made. And ingredient number two, and I want you to lock in on this one, they found deep meaning in their work. And the deep meaning in their work, this idea of I am instructing our country's greatest resource, our children. I am pouring into the lives of young people. And so when they derive that terrific and worthy meaning, guess what happens? Their salary and benefits are enough. Key word here. They're enough. The teacher says, this is what I'm called to do, and this is the context of that calling. This is what I get paid. And there's not a fast-moving ladder. It's not an escalator that's steadily moving up financially. It's fairly fixed. But this is what I'm called to do. Let me go a step deeper. This is what I love to do. I love instructing young people, if I could say it very simply. And so what happens? What happens is what they make is enough because they are walking into work every day, not for a bigger paycheck. Watch this. They're walking into work every day for bigger impact. Let me say it again. They're not walking into work every day for a bigger paycheck. They're walking into work every day for a bigger impact. So that what happens is they say, I'm going to make my salary enough. And I believe that the meaning drives the discipline. This is massive, folks. If you're in a situation where you're fighting this consumerism in America, you're fighting this comparison stuff that we all suffer from, you're fighting to deal with this nagging, I need more, my financial situation is not great, and I think more money's going to solve it. I think when you come back down to this premise, that, by the way, is undeniable. This isn't my opinion. This is data. And if we use the teachers as an example, then I think we need to now say, okay, what's driving me? Is it a bigger paycheck or is it greater contribution? And I would submit to you today, this is not popular, by the way. I could see people hammering me for this. Oh, this is altruistic. This is idealistic. It's a little kumbaya, Ken. I got bills to pay. Yes, so do teachers. Many of which, by the way, became, and I said they were in the top 5 of net worth millionaires. They overcame student loan debt too. They got to buy cars too. They're raising children too. They've bought homes as well. So if they can do it, you can do it. So how can you, in a situation where you are right now, those of you that feel stuck financially, and the call, the pull is to do a certain type of work that does not have a fast track to 6 figures. How do I make enough? Well, first of all, I believe you got to do enough. And if you're new to this show, you're going, how do I figure that out? I'm going to tell you this tool right here, Find the Work You're Wired to Do, has the Get Clear assessment in it, which will do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. It'll help you see what you do best, what you enjoy doing most, and the results that motivate you. And now we can begin to see where meaningful work is. And I believe that's when we get to a place of contentment with our contribution. Now, that's the first step. You can get it at kencoleman.com. Second step is I want to just roll through, and Ramsey Solutions, by the way, you can get a deeper dive, and I would recommend the book Total Money Makeover. If you're going, okay, Ken, I want to figure out these baby steps. But here they are. How do you get to financial freedom? Baby step 1. We put $1,000, just $1,000 in a savings account to cover most emergencies. We know from data that will usually cover your garden variety emergencies. Number 2, if you have debt, baby step 2 is you list out all your debts, and we go smallest to largest in our focus because we want to get momentum, and we start attacking in our budget with everything we can, selling stuff, cutting the budget, and we begin to attack those debts, smallest to largest. Once we pay off the smallest debt, we take what we were paying on that and we add it to the next, and we call this the debt snowball. You can learn more about this in Total Money Makeover. Once we pay off all debt, we get to baby step 3, where we're going to save 3 to 6 months of your income as a true emergency fund, and that is in a separate savings account. We don't touch it unless in true emergency. Once we fund that, baby step 4 is we begin to take 15% of our income, what we're bringing home, and we are investing that in retirement so that we can take care of ourselves. Once we get on that plan, that is in perpetuity, and that leads us to baby step 5. If we've got kids, we want to fund their college. Baby step 6, once we get that into the perpetuity and we're playing that out and we're investing, now we're going to, if we have a home, we're going to pay our home off. And once we pay the home off in baby step 6, that would put us in baby step 7, where we live and give like no one else. All right, that's a quick review. Total Money Makeover, they're great resource for you to do a deep dive on that, RamseySolutions.com. So I just want to encourage you that, again, back to the teacher here. If you find work that is meaningful, you will then see a life that is enough. And when you have enough, you can be disciplined to get out of debt, to save, invest, and then ultimately you truly are that net worth millionaire who has the margin, who has the freedom to live the life that you want to live. That's how it works. We're here to help. Hey folks, I want to tell you about Aiden. He started at Bethel Tech 2 weeks after graduating high school, and less than a year later, he's 19 and working as a full-stack software developer. He loved the idea of being able to work at his own pace, but what he really thought was cool was Bethel Tech's faith-based learning environment and being with classmates who had a similar worldview. Now, if this is you, or if you have a son or a daughter that's looking for the next step out of high school and they may be tech-minded, at least interested, you need to talk to Bethel Tech. Listen to this. Fortune Magazine named them as a top 10 best UX UI boot camp for 2024. And right now, they're offering you 10% off because you listen and watch the Ken Coleman Show. They also allow you to pay cash, and I know you'll like that. Go to BethelTech.net/Ken Coleman for details. Terms and conditions apply. Most unethical behavior goes unreported and unresolved. This is in the workplace. Let's just let that sit for a moment. Most unethical behavior goes unreported and unresolved. Yikes. I'm going to cover this because I have a heart for leaders and leadership. Not just a heart for you, the worker, the employee. I have a heart for everybody in the world of work. I want people to win at work. And a huge component to winning at work is being in a good environment. And where there is unethical behavior that is going unreported, and more importantly, going unresolved, this is not a good environment. So I want to address it. And I want to address it holistically. I want to address it from you, the employee, who has seen it, reported it, and not seen it dealt with. And then I want to cover it from the role of the leader and the leader perspective or manager. So here's where we are. Let's just set the scene. This is a Gallup article based on Gallup data. U.S. perceptions, we're talking about U.S. workers, U.S. perceptions of honesty and ethical standards in nearly 24 sectors of our economy. We're talking about professions, sectors, are down compared with measures from 2019. So in 24 areas of our working economy, 24 industries, if we want to call it that for further clarity, way down on employee perception of ethical and honest behavior. Gallup's most recent study they did earlier in 2024 they studied the frequency and the impact of unethical behavior in U.S. organizations. And not surprisingly, where there is unchecked and unmanaged ethical behavior, bad behavior, it saps employee engagement and it kills the culture of the organization. Of course it does. You want a bad culture and you want to do it quickly? I got your answer. You want to hey, leader, you want to destroy your culture quickly? I got it. Allow unethical behavior to happen, and good people are going to bail. They'll bail emotionally first, and that will affect their engagement. And then second, they're going to bail physically. They're going to leave you. So I'm being a little bit sarcastic, not a little bit, a lot sarcastic. But leaders, come on. You're not going to get away with letting unethical behavior live. You got to correct it. And to the extent that you cannot correct it, you remove it. Right? Pretty simple. What do U.S. employees think about all this? How does it affect them beyond what we just said about engagement? 23% of U.S. employees say they have personally seen or firsthand knowledge of their colleagues or manager demonstrating unethical behavior in the past 12 months. This again from a May 2024 Gallup survey. Employees with firsthand awareness of unethical behavior in their organization are nearly 3 times as likely to be actively disengaged and 2 times likely to be burned out. We already talked about the lack of engagement, but let's talk about the rate of burnout when an employee knows that bad stuff is being allowed to exist. It weighs on them emotionally and mentally. Why? Because they're good people. Good people. Good people care about right and wrong. Now, we're going to get into that in a minute. What if you care about right and wrong, but you do nothing about it? Are you still acting as a good person? There's your ethical question of the day. I care about it. I see it. I know that's wrong, and it bothers me. I care. But if I stand idly by, am I now taking on the character of a good person? I'll let you answer that. I think you know what I think. 43% of employees who had firsthand awareness of unethical behavior in the past year within their organization say they did report it. These are good people. They raised their hand. But let's talk about the 57% who didn't. 57% said, nope, no thanks, not my problem. 57% of employees who knew about unethical behavior said, I'm turning my head the other way. I'm not getting involved. Well, let's look at what they reported as to why they didn't say anything. 22% said they thought no action would be taken. 20% said they were afraid of retaliation. And 9% said they previously reported something and it was not a good experience. So you thought I was going to get mad at these people and judge them. I'm not. Let's look at these 3 reasons. 20% said, I see it. It bothers me. I don't think any action will be taken. Why do they believe that? Because they're watching the circumstances around the bad behavior and they go, I think everybody's kind of aware of this that's in a leadership position. And my gut tells me they're not going to do anything about it. 20% said, I think if I raise my hand and say, this is not good, that I'm going to actually get clapped back on. I could say to that person, and I could coach them, and I could say, you still got to do something about it. You got to do what's right. And after you do what's right, nothing's dealt with, then you got to move on. That's the standard advice I've given callers who've called in on this very situation. However, I'm going to hold the leader responsible for that as well, because a leader, and we're going to cover that very briefly, should create a culture and environment where someone goes, I'm not worried about being retaliated against. I feel safe raising my hand saying this was not right. So, what did Gallup find on managers who do this right? Here are 3 things they found. When managers model integrity themselves, so they act with impugnable integrity. So people look at them and go, my leader always does the right thing. I do not question their integrity. So they model integrity. 2, they regularly facilitate conversations about integrity with the team. In other words, they talk about it openly with the team. Listen, we want to act with integrity, and if there's ever a lack of integrity, you bring it to me, and I promise you we're going to deal with it. So they model it personally, but then they say, not only do I hold out myself as someone who should be above reproach, I'm also going to be the sheriff about this within the team. And then number 3, they appropriately react to unethical behavior when they see it. So quick review. Number 1, they model a high standard of integrity. Number 2, they talk about that standard being upheld, and they empower the team to raise their hand and bring it to them. And then number 3, when it is brought to them, they act on it. So what happens then? Employees that see this are 3 times more likely to be engaged. Hello. And 4 times as likely to say, I'm connected to the culture of this organization. That's a huge response. So leaders, what do you take away from this? Do those 3 things. Model integrity. Talk about integrity and say, my door is open. When you see a lack of integrity, you bring it to me. And I'm going to tell you this, when you bring it to me, I'm going to root out the lack of integrity. And what happens is people say, I feel safe. I like this leader. And as a result, I like this culture in this company. And they come to work and they're fired up and they stay longer. Folks, it's pretty simple stuff. Don't cut corners. Do the right thing. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. If you're suffering mentally and emotionally in the workplace because of the workplace, you got to get help. You got to get help first. And then I can help you figure out how to get out of there. But I want you getting help first. And as you know, we've got a partnership with BetterHelp. I love that resource. I've talked to you about it a lot because they give you a very easy way to get mental health therapy from professionals. And so I thought it was important to have a expanded conversation on some of the issues in the workforce to help you feel like, hey, you're not alone in this. And there's nothing wrong with you for feeling some of the things you feel about what's going on, and there's help. And so David Yadish is licensed in both Pennsylvania and California and a member of BetterHelp's team. And I recently had him on, and I think we had a very important conversation that I believe is going to help a lot of people. So check this out. David, I read an article recently that cited some data that 58% of Americans call themselves lonely. That number's up. I think the latest data on that would have been 46%. So it's trending the wrong way. What are you hearing? When you hear that data, what pops into your mind as the causes of that upward trend?
Absolutely. It's interesting because it's not just my clients that I'm hearing this from, right? I'm hearing it from friends and family, even myself from time to time. And we're hearing a lot of this loneliness coming from, we're coming out of this pandemic we had where life changed for everyone. It was this big traumatic global experience. And we had distance between ourselves physically. We had distance between ourselves with work. We had distance in every aspect of our lives. And as we've tried to grow into this new world of technology, this new world of how we relate to people, it's harder and harder to connect. And we can point to all kinds of different things, including technology, social media, the news, work from home culture. But what I'm seeing a lot of is even in spaces where people are around others, right? Even in spaces
Yeah.
of going to concerts or hanging out with friends, going out to dinner, people are still experiencing this epidemic of loneliness.
Do you see in the data, is loneliness more of an issue at work for women or men, or is it just undecipherable as far as which way maybe one group handles it?
I mean, so Harvard has done research on this. There's been Gallup polls. There's been research from the American Psychiatric Association, and they all find slightly different things based on who they're talking to.
Uh,
Um, right now, it looks like the biggest population is younger adults between like
yeah,
19 and 30, 35.
yeah,
Those who are kind of just establishing themselves in a career.
yeah,
Um, the career world looks totally different now than it did 5, 10 years ago.
yeah.
Um, but also, single mothers report lots of loneliness with work.
Mm.
Um, adults that are getting ready for retirement, like towards the end of their work experience,
Interesting.
are reporting lots of loneliness. Um, and all for different factors, right? Different reasons.
What do you think's driving the single mother loneliness?
I think a lot of that comes from challenges with connecting with friends and people outside of work, right?
Yeah.
If you're a single mother and you're working full time and taking care of children full time, which is a whole other job, right?
Yes.
Like now you're working two full-time jobs.
Oh, no question.
So who do you engage with? And if you
Yeah.
don't have the support system and you don't have the friends that you can engage with, um, it makes that harder. And those breaks you're taking at work, whether it's lunch or a 5-minute break in between, a lot of times that's being spent caring for children, caring for a household,
Mm.
right?
I think we got to find a way to support these single moms
Absolutely.
because to the extent that you can help them create community at work, it's pouring back into them, and they're not just always pouring out. They can't give what they don't have. But boy, if you can somehow find a way to support them, you're talking about superheroes.
Absolutely. I mean, these are people who can do 20 different things at the same time, right? Like
Yeah,
we're talking
right.
incredible people, incredible employees.
Right. Their mental fortitude, their strength is off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Just a quick observation there. The other question I have is leaders. Leadership, you've heard this for decades. I've been in the leadership space and I've heard leaders say it. I've talked to leaders about it, how lonely it is. Thoughts about leaders and how they avoid the loneliness. What is unique about their situation that they need to be aware of that would help them avoid it?
Well, I think part of the reason why it's so challenging for leaders is because there's a necessary level of boundaries between leaders and the people that they're managing, right? The people that they're leading. You can't get too close because then that can bring up some nepotism issues. It can bring
Right.
up issues with productivity and challenges with discipline, right? So it makes it harder to be a leader. So one, being aware of that and recognizing that it's okay to have those boundaries, but you also need to find ways to connect. And your idea from earlier of having kind of a simple, goofy question at the beginning of meetings, I think can be really powerful for leaders because it's helping the people you're managing, right? It's helping them connect. It's helping them connect to you on a personal level. Um, and it's helping you kind of understand the people you're working with better, right? So asking a fun question, getting to know people, it kind of breaks down some of those barriers while still maintaining a level of boundaries. You're not talking about issues that you shouldn't be talking about at work. And I also encourage managers talk to each other, talk to other managers, talk to other people leaders who are going through similar things and can relate in that level. Because you don't have to manage alone. You don't have to be in charge alone.
Yeah. I want to switch gears just a bit on this because this is really at the core of our entire conversation, that there still remains a massive stigma out there around the idea of just going, I'm not okay right now. I'm not okay. It feels as though maybe the younger generation is more open to therapy and getting professional help. Do you see that? Is that true? Because if you look at the workplace, you've got Gen Z Millennials is the largest demographic in the workforce. Then my generation, Gen X, and then of course we've got the boomers. Is there data that shows more acceptance of therapy? In other words, a professional that I can actually say, I'm not broken and messed up, but I need help. I'm not healthy. What do you see on the views of therapy these days?
There's definitely been an improvement in the decrease in stigma, people talking more about mental health and therapy in general. We see that largely in the Gen Z population, right? A lot of Gen Z has been through so many traumatic events at young ages, right? That talking about mental health and the challenges of mental health and therapy has kind of become second nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a part of life, as it should be. Right? I'm a huge advocate that everyone should have the opportunity to access therapy. Everyone should talk about their emotional experiences. We saw so much more discussion about mental health post-pandemic, as people were like, wow, that really struck me. I really had a hard time with that. I need to talk about it.
Yeah.
And as you see more people talking about it, as you see this conversation becoming part of our popular, vocabulary, we're going to see more and more people being able to reach out for support.
But I know that I tend to isolate and thus feel lonely when I keep my feelings of doubt in the skating rink in this dome here.
Mm-hmm.
It feels as though like that's the whole deal. Like we can feel lonely in a nanosecond when we isolate in our thoughts and feelings and we don't get them out. Is this true?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Keeping it to ourselves is a breeding ground for doubt, anxiety, imposter syndrome, right? That's where this thrives, because when it's all to yourself and inside and you're not talking about it, your brain runs away with all of these false narratives, all these things. You're looking for reinforcement for these negative beliefs. So 10 things can happen that say, you're a good person, you're a hard worker, you're doing well at what you're doing, right? But all it takes is one thing where you mess up or you didn't do as well as you wanted to, or someone makes a comment. And that if you don't talk about it, that can get stuck and play on loop in our systems, in our brains, in our emotions. And then that increases doubt. It breeds doubt and insecurity.
Yeah. I mean, I cannot tell you how many calls I've taken over the years where someone has got a micromanager above them, and it's excruciating, and it drives so much negativity in the workplace. I think it's one of the deadly sins of leadership. I really believe that. And so I was talking about it to me, and I want you to correct any of this. This is just from my experience. You're the pro here. I think at the core of micromanagement is fear. They are attempting to get control of something that they fear they don't have control over. And so thus the micromanagement. That's my take. Correct, clean up any of this. It won't hurt my ego at all. However, here's what happened. The thing goes bananas, goes viral. 10 million people, 40,000 comments. It's nuts, right? And so it said to me, I was like, this is still a massive nerve. So to that end, I want to look at this two ways from the counselor here, okay? Number one, let's talk to the leader first. What is a leader who might acknowledge today there's somewhat healthy? I think I might be micromanaging. I'm hearing some buzz from the team. I'm a little bit too controlling here. What would you counsel them to do? What would be the thing that you would be diving in with them on?
I would definitely talk to them first about where that's coming from, because I think you're absolutely right that a lot of micromanagement comes from this idea of perfectionism, comes from if I'm following all these steps, that's the best way to do it. And the fear of what's going to happen if it's not done right? What's going to happen if these people that are working for me can't do it? And I would want to challenge leaders on this idea that that's what teams are for, to engage and do things. And part of your job is to kind of teach and educate. And if there's something going off track, that's when you can step in. But micromanaging and taking on all those pieces is a surefire way for burnout for you, surefire way for burnout for your employees. And you're not going to get the best work. The best work comes from people who have that creative freedom, have that ability to kind of govern themselves to an extent. And, just to throw it out there, because I know some of the feedback when we talk about micromanaging is, oh, well, I have an employee who just doesn't do the work and can't do it.
Right.
And if that's the case, then work with that employee specifically.
Yeah.
Like this idea of punishing everyone with the way you approach things doesn't work. It never has, and it never will.
That's exactly right. Well, I hope that helped you feel like there is hope and help. I want to thank David Yadish for being a part of the conversation. And if you need that help, it's super simple. BetterHelp.com/Ken. That's BetterHelp.com/Ken. As always, you matter. You have what it takes. And I'm here to help you press on, because the world needs what only you can give.
Thanks for listening to The Ken Coleman Show. For more, you can find the show on demand wherever you listen to podcasts and watch the show on YouTube. You can also find Ken across all social media by following @Ken Coleman.
David Yadish's input is general psychological information based on research and clinical experience. It's intended to be general and informational in nature. Also, just because you might have heard something on the show that sounds similar to what you're experiencing, beware of self-diagnosis. Diagnosis is not required to find relief, and you'll want to find a qualified professional to assess and explore diagnosis, if that's important to you. If you or your partner are in crisis and uncertain of whether you can maintain safety, please reach out for support. Crisis hotlines, local authorities. Have a safety plan. That can be done with a therapist too.